Hey guys, it's Frieren here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we might be doing our first our first anime review for this year. I can't remember if I've talked about anime besides, the Spy Family movie on the channel this year yet. I think this might be our first review for anything like that. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which is a wonderful series. I really recommend you guys watch this. I think it's phenomenal. It's wonderful. It's so great, and I want to talk about it today, right? So, Frieren Beyond Journey's End, the anime is done by Madhouse and distributed through Crunchyroll. It's one season so far. It has 28 episodes, which is a pretty long season. I think it released as two separate cores, right? So there was like 12 episodes. And then there was like a break, and then 16 episodes, right? I think that's how it distributed, because that's how the songs were divided in like the opening and the ending, right? But I'm not exactly sure, because I watched this after it finished releasing. So I'm not really caught up to the way that it was set up, right? And the anime was predominantly worked on by Keiichiro Saito and Tomohiro Suzuki. The the manga that it's based on is by Kanehito Yamada and Tsukasa Abe. And I don't know which one's the writer and which one's the artist, but either way, they work on it together. It's released in Japan by Shogakukan on Weekly Shonen Sunday and published by Viz Media here in the States. And you can actually read it on the Viz manga app. So you don't have to buy this book if you don't want to. You can just read it on the app, which is a $2 subscription a month. And you can read about 100 chapters a day, which is a lot, right? It's pretty unlikely that you'll reach that amount of chapters a day unless you are like a teenager and have nothing better to do with your life, right? So yeah, I recommend you guys watch the anime instead of reading the manga, just because that's how I watched it, and that's how I consumed it, and I loved the anime. I'm not necessarily a big fan of watching anime over reading manga, but I think that the stuff that's exclusive to the manga probably helped make this as good as it was for me, right? So that would be the color, the fluidity of the animation, the voices. I really like them. I watched it in the dub, and it's really good. And also the music. I think the music was phenomenal. I loved it. So yeah, overall, I mean, the series is wonderful. It's immensely genuine and relaxing, and it also has this kind of like healing element to it. I forget the name of that genre in Japanese, and there is no like equivalent genre in English, but ultimately you can say that this is a slice of life fantasy series, right? And of course there's action, and there are kind of relatively high stakes to the action sometimes, in the sense that the characters might die, but because of the way that the story is set up, you're still relaxed and comfortable with the story throughout the whole thing. Even when there's a lot of high octane action, it is ultimately really relaxing, right? And also there's this kind of element of bittersweetness, which to me is kind of a signifier that this kind of falls into that healing manga genre, right? So I'm not really sure how to describe it, but there's something really appealing about the way that it explores its characters, what the characters are feeling, what the hell the point of their journey is, and how they're kind of doing these things, right? And many times throughout the story, the characters have this small but very significant revelation about themselves or each other or the way that their party works, and it's all really phenomenal. And it works really nicely, and it almost feels like this cathartic like journey of self-discovery that you go on as you see these characters do it, right? And of course, that's a little bit too deep and kind of too serious for anime and manga, but I think that to the right person, in the right context, this might provide so much cathartic release, right? I don't necessarily have any need for that, so to me, it was just a really enjoyable and relaxing series, and partially it was because this is more or less what I really want out of fantasy right now, right? I've been reading a lot of Wandering In, and one of my favorite manga is Mary Grave, right? Which kind of has the same kind of idea of a character retracing a path that another character that they knew went through, and then seeing the effect that this character had throughout this journey, and then kind of having these self-reflective moments throughout it, right? So Mary Grave has kind of that same idea, and Frieren is quite good at it, and also it's much longer. So it's slower, and that slowness actually helps kind of push this theme that is kind of prevalent throughout it, right? But I wouldn't necessarily know what to name this theme, right? You can kind of call it self-discovery. You could call it coming to terms with things. You could call it whatever you want. But it's this prevalent idea throughout the whole series that is quite great, right? So let me actually talk about what the hell the series is about, because I've been talking for 5 minutes and I haven't told you that, right? So basically, Frieren is a Tolkien-esque elf. So she is essentially immortal. She's technically not. She can die under certain circumstances, as in, like, if she gets hurt enough, she will die. But she will not die of old age, right? She will not die because of the passage of time, right? And the world is basically past the age of elves, right? Elves are rather rare and far between. There's not very many of them left. And Frieren is more or less the most prominent elf left. And she was prominent because 100 years, or like 50 to 60 years before the series started, she went on this adventure with 3 other characters, and they defeated the Demon Lord, right? The great evil of this land, right? And so she was the magic user on the team. She was a mage. She traveled with Himmel the hero, who was a human, with Heiter the priest, who was also human, and with Eisen the dwarf, which was a warrior, right? He was Eisen the warrior, who was a dwarf, and she traveled with them, and it was a 10-year journey, right? To her, who's already lived about 1,000 years, that was pretty minimal. That was like kind of like an afternoon for her, right? But to all of these other characters, it was the journey of their lifetime, right? And so she didn't really understand that. They finished the journey. They defeated the Demon King. They came back to the city where they started, and they had their celebration, and then they all kind of went their separate ways. We continue on. 50 years pass, and then Frieren meets up with Eisen again, right? And she meets up with Heiter and Himmel as well. Actually, she meets with Himmel first, and then with Eisen and Heiter. And so they go on a short little journey away from the city where they meet, to go to a different place to see this meteor shower that they saw when they defeated the Demon King. And then shortly after, Himmel dies because he has reached his old age. His injuries and all of the things that he went through caught up to him, and so he passes away. And so now they go through this this funeral of his. Frieren initially doesn't really feel much about it, and then as she's slowly coming to terms with the fact that this guy died, she realizes, crap, I barely knew him. I gave no fucking shits about this guy, even though he was, like, immensely important, right? Even though he was super meaningful to me, right? And this journey that they went on 10 years, which to her is like the blink of an eye, was actually immensely informative to her as a person, right? And she kind of realizes this, and so she starts crying, and she kind of changes the way she looks at things. She tries to be more empathic, more willing to interact with people, right? And so that happens. She kind of changes her tune a little bit. She kind of tries to grow. And then 30 more years pass, right? Or 20-something years pass. And so she goes off to Eisen. She goes to meet him. And then he's like, Heiter is about to die soon. You should probably go see him. And Heiter somehow managed to live way too long for a person. And it's probably because of the blessing that he had as a priest, right? And so she goes to him, and they spend a few years together. And the reason why they spend these few years together is because Heiter is dying, but in his old age, in his desire to prove himself to his goddess, he decided to do something quite meaningful and positive, which is save this little girl from oblivion because she wanted to suicide herself, and also raise her, right? But he's getting too old. It's not really possible for him to do this properly, right? And so he recruits Frieren through devious means to help him. And these devious means are quite innocent, right? So it's not a problem. And so Frieren lives with them until Heiter passes. And she teaches this little girl, Fern, how to be a great mage, right? And so Frieren now has taught this girl all that she needs to know to be like a relatively high level mage. And so Heiter, before he passes, is like, good, now you can take her with you as your apprentice. Please take care of her, look after her, because I won't be able to anymore, right? And so Frieren and Fern go on this adventure together. They end up meeting with Heiter again, and then he tells them, you know, I will pass soon, but before I pass, I want to go on one last adventure. And so they go to this place that reveals to us a lot of things about Frieren's past, and also leads us to like the main point of the story, which is Frieren and the people that she recruits throughout this journey will eventually go to this place called Enda, and from there travel to this other place called Areolis or something, which is heaven. They shall move through the old journey that Frieren went through with Himmel and crew to try to get to this new place beyond the Demon Lord's castle, because if they reach there, they might be able to talk with their old friends again, because that's where the spirits live, right? And so Frieren embarks on this journey thanks to Eisen, and she does a favor for him. She decides to take on his apprentice and bring him on their journey to help him grow, right? And hopefully she'll be able to do this before Eisen passes, because he's a dwarf, but he's also kind of getting up there in age and he's about to pass away. And so she's hoping that they'll be able to do this, right? And so that's basically what the actual journey is, right? So all of that was all set up. This is like the first 4 episodes of the series. And this is all set up for this long journey that Fern and Frieren are going to take alongside a few other characters to try to get to this place so that they can once again meet with their old friends, right? And in Fern's case, this is meet Heiter again as an adult, so that she can see that he took care of her properly and they can talk, right? And for Frieren, it's to see Himmel again. And throughout this journey, they retrace, the old journey and kind of go through these great moments together, right? And it's immensely beautiful to me. This is a great story. I loved it. It made me so happy and relaxed. It was immensely great. I loved it. I think it's phenomenal, right? And it's not the focus, but the fights here that they go through are awesome. Like the animation of the series is phenomenal, right? So I recommend that you watch the whole series, but at the very least, see some of the fights and see some of the interactions between the characters, on YouTube and stuff, because they're really, really great, right? And so there you go. And basically, the anime essentially sets up the prologue of the story, right? So there's the initial prologue, which is the journey, the original journey ending, and then getting up to meeting Eisen and having him, deliver the quest, which is go to Areolis to meet our old departed friends. But then, by the end of the first season of the series, we basically go through gathering the team and meeting the prerequisites necessary to leave on this future journey, right? To move on from this area, from the bottom section of the map, right? And so you can kind of call this whole 28 episode season like the prologue of the story, right? The same way that the East Blue Saga of One Piece is the prologue of One Piece, right? It is like the setup section of the story before they move on, right? But it, don't think about that negatively. This is quite positive. This is a very great, idea, because you took all of this time to develop these characters, to develop their relationships, and so all that you have going forward is just continuing to grow that and focusing more on the plot line in the story, right? So I'm very excited to see where this goes. And so there really isn't too much else to say. I mean, the music was great, the storytelling is great, the characters are great, everything is great. In terms of the music, I love it because it really has this kind of like classic, like medieval fantasy music vibe to it. And sometimes it also kind of has that kind of like fairy tale, like rock, like tavern music vibe to it, which to me is phenomenal. I love that sort of music, which is like really weird. It's almost like folk metal-esque, right? That's kind of like the best terminology I have for it. And it's wonderful. And, the moments where the music kind of strikes most is during the action sequences and stuff like that. So it works really, really nicely. And finally, I just want to mention some of my favorite episodes and why they're my favorite. And I think that will be end for this review, right? So, one of my favorite episodes is episode 3, when they talk about Qual, which is a demon, and the spell Soul Track, which is a spell that back in the day, about 100 years ago at this point, because Himmel dies 50 years after their journey, and then it takes another 25 for her to meet with Fern. So that's 75 years ago. But the journey was like before, like 50, like more than 50 years ago, right? From when Himmel died, right? So it's about 100 years or so since Frieren previously met Quoll, right? And Quoll was the inventor of this murder spell, right? Like this kind of like Avadabra spell. However, with Frieren's help and with the kind of crazy advancement of humanity, Soul Track is now basic offensive magic. It's nothing that special. And this moment here where they meet him, they release him from his trapping spell, and then they like basically get rid of him, is immensely enjoyable because of like just like how it shows the change in magic and the change in these characters, right? So I really like that one. Episode 6 is Stark versus a Dragon. Stark is Eisen's apprentice, and he's a really powerful warrior character, and he's also really ridiculous, and I really like this character, but also his fight with the dragon is great. And then the kind of little situation here that happens immediately afterwards where Frieren just kind of goes into the dragon's nest to look for stuff is really cute and really fun. Episode 9 is Frieren versus Aura, and Aura is this great demon character, as in she's a great demon. She's a really powerful demon. And this episode is phenomenal because this is maybe the first time that we get to see Frieren actually flex her magic, and it's crazy powerful and it's insane. It's really, really cool. Now, this is also a really good setup episode for nearly the end of the series because we meet another elf character who's even more badass than Frieren in a different way, and it's really cool because it sets that up, right? Episode 12 is the Hamburg steak to celebrate Stark's birthday, but also it gives us background on Stark's relationship with his family, his relationship with Eisen, and it shows us that, you know, Frieren actually really cares about Stark, right? Because she does this thing that's really special and meaningful to him, and then she helps him understand why it's special and meaningful to him in a really great way, right? So I like this episode a lot. Episode 21 is when we learn about Frieren's backstory properly. So we learn who was the master of Frieren, who was the master of Frieren's master, and this relationship between these three characters that is really important for the last kind of 7 or 8 episodes of the series. And I don't want to mention anything because I don't want to spoil that because I think it's great, but it's really, really good stuff here. And then episode 26, this is not the last episode, but it's near the end, is Frieren being super badass and having these awesome action sequences. And then this kind of idea about what is magic and how it's all about visualization and intent, right? And it's a really great episode, right? So those are my favorite episodes in the series. A lot of them are action-based, but the reason I love the series is not the action, it's all of the other stuff that comes with it, right? So keep that in mind, and I hope you guys enjoy the series, enjoy this review. Let me know what you thought down below. Have you read or watched Frieren? What do you think about it? Are you going to watch it or read it after this review? Let me know down below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and see you guys later.